Donald Trump lied about how much COVID was here for like over a week. He said there's just probably one case, there's maybe 10 cases, there's maybe 100 cases, when there were tens of thousands of infected people in New York City.
I think that there can be a benefit to going about things in a very undemocratic way, right? Because we look at the amount of lives that the vaccine saved, and someone that we see as an inherently like authoritarian figure honestly wound up saving a lot of lives, and I feel like he doesn't get enough credit for that. And honestly, it's one of the reasons why I wound up re-electing him and re-voting for him, because he strikes me as someone that is capable of not being afraid to bend the rules of government in order to pass through policies that actually can and do help people.
So I think that in that argument, there is a very buried nugget of truth where, people were critical Abe Lincoln, suspending habeas corpus for a little bit during the Civil War and everything. And you've got Trump, who I don't know if I would say Operation Warp Speed is an undemocratic way necessarily to approach trying to speed the vaccine thing. The only reason I say it is because democracy can mean a lot of different things. It doesn't mean that the executive is acting, therefore it's not democratic, right? I don't know if he necessarily broke any laws or any rules. But I would say that the biggest issue when it comes to looking at Donald Trump breaking rules is his lack of a coherent plan, or his lack of vision for what he's trying to do. Sometimes ends up, shooting himself in the foot, as opposed to actually being able to take advantage of the thing that he's done. So, for instance, I kind of say that as a backhanded compliment when people say, well, what was good about Trump? And I'll say, oh, well, Operation Warp Speed. And the reason why it's a backhanded compliment is because Trump doesn't take credit for Operation Warp Speed anymore, because he poisoned his entire audience against the vaccine, such that when you say it saved lives, it did. It saved Democratic lives, because in general, Democrats are more likely to get vaccinated than Republicans were.
Yeah. So you made a lot of solid points there, and in a roundabout way, I think some of the things you bring up with the fact that he often shoots himself in the foot is a very Trump thing to do. And I've watched it time and time again throughout his administration. And it's an unfortunate thing, but plenty of presidential administrations have shot themselves in the foot time and time again. And they've walked back on promises that they've made. The Obama administration famously never pulled out troops from Afghanistan, right? It took Donald Trump to that. And you can go bit by bit. I'm not trying to both sides it, but I feel like there's this hyper criticism. Of course, he's the president, but there's this hyper criticism on Trump messed up. Trump shot himself in the foot. Well, at the same time, and I do strongly believe this, I think he's one of the most democratic presidents we've had, solely off of the fact that when he got elected, most of the positions and stuff that he backed his base on, he tried to do, right?
Sure, but I think one issue I have is when people talk about failures of Trump, we switch to a passive voice, or we speak of things as though they never could have been otherwise. Like you just said, some things have happened under Trump that were unfortunate, or the fact that his audience was poisoned against vaccines was unfortunate. It wasn't unfortunate. That was Trump's fault. It wasn't that these things just happened to happen under Trump. It was his poor leadership that directly caused these things to happen. And a lot of the talk around COVID and around vaccines, that was just his fault. That was bad leadership.
I'm not sure if I would agree with that, mainly because the fact that, if I remember correctly, the first thing that came out when there was talk about speedrunning the FDA's administration processes and everything was the fact that Donald Trump's administration and the Democrats in response were saying that, well, we shouldn't take a Trump vaccine, right? I'm trying to remember the specific elected representatives. And
so I think the specific statements where you could argue that they weren't the most responsible statements, something like, I wouldn't trust what Trump says, I would have to see what the FDA says or something, right? Which were statements that were said, but Democrats ended up taking it and Republicans didn't.
But this is the thing, right? So if the Democratic administration can make claims or statements on certain positions on the vaccine, and then when they actually wind up, then the public hears it, and the Democratic administration's public doesn't actually follow through on what their representatives say, then I don't know how much you can actually fault Trump for his own supporters letting themselves die and not taking the vaccine.
Well, I think the issue is that it's a false equivalence to say that Democrats signaled against the vaccine as hard as Trump and the Republicans signaled against everything COVID related. There were a couple of statements that Democrat lawmakers probably shouldn't have made with regards to the vaccine.
But
they were bordering on irresponsible, maybe. But Trump, when COVID first came here, right? People don't like Fauci because they said one of many things. Now they say he lied about masks early on. Donald Trump lied about how much COVID was here for over a week. He said there's just probably one case, there's maybe 10 cases, there's maybe 100 cases, when there were tens of thousands of infected people in New York City.
I mean, I feel like there's been an issue here because you're kind of conflating the response that Trump had with the distribution of the vaccine and everything, and what his fellow Republicans said about the vaccine, versus the fact that there's only so much you can do when your own base kind of runs with different things. Trump was never in opposition to the vaccine. He made it. He even, proudly proclaimed at many different, events he went to that he proudly got the jab and stuff. So while Trump isn't like inherently against the vaccine, he did critique elements of the administration and the CDC, like Fauci, like other representatives. So while there is like gridlock there, I don't think just because there's gridlock that all of a sudden magically your base just kind of caters or something. I don't think like it's
You don't
right.
think Donald Trump constantly undermining and attacking the government is what led to Republicans not trusting the government?
No, I actually don't think that's the case, because while Donald Trump has attacked the government, he's attacked the like specific sectors. Like you
Well,
can obviously,
it's like every sector that doesn't agree with him, basically, right? Like he attacked the Federal Reserve when they wouldn't lower interest rates for him. He attacked Fauci and everything. And
but plenty of presidents complain about the administration not working the way they want to. That's the whole point. We've had this as a thing all the way back from like Theodore Roosevelt, right, with the bully pulpit. This is something that presidential
I don't think
nominates a candidate.
the bully pulpit is supposed to be, I believe, to other lawmakers in contested districts, not to your own cabinet. Right? You can always fire and rehire.
It definitely has been to your own cabinet, though. You can definitely use it. It's a tool that the president has as being the voice of the people that elected him to apply pressure to the constituents around him and the people and the lawmakers. So I feel like trying to like hinge a point on like, well, like, the whole Republican Party went like tits up about the vaccine. Like, yeah, that did happen. And I'm not in agreement with it, to be honest with you. I got both jabs and, I'm like fully vaccinated. My friends look at me like I'm crazy. They think I'm going to be sterilized or something. But despite that, like I still went through the process of getting vaccine. Like I feel like there's this weird conflation here where it's like, Donald Trump never took out any outright statements against the vaccine, and then you saying that because of the fact that he critiqued the government, that all of a sudden that all Republicans threw out the baby with the bathwater. I just don't think that's
clear,
like fundamentally
he didn't just
true.
critique the government. He's made several claims that huge swaths of the government were working in a malicious manner to undermine him and his administration for the entirety of his government and the next government, and sometimes I guess in his current government, depending on who he's talking about.